Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another edition of the Americans for Prosperity Tennessee weekly update. Before I give a quick round robin introduction of the who, what, when, where, why, who we all are, let me tell everybody again what we're doing here and what we intend and hope to do with this little weekly program here. The obvious, let's state here, it's in the name itself. We're going over what's happening in the past week at the federal level. This week in particular, we'll be discussing the PRO Act, and then we'll be discussing what's been moving through the Tennessee legislature, what just passed this last week, what's coming up next week, what Americans for Prosperity Tennessee is focusing on in particular. That's the self-explanatory things flying at 30,000 feet. But if I can get a little bit more real and become a little bit more vulnerable, becoming vulnerable is part of what I hope we do on a program like this as well. Vulnerability tends to breed vulnerability, and I hope we can live life with each other and sort of build a little digital family and have intimate, deep conversations, ask questions that you may not ask anywhere else. Tori knows a lot of stuff, see what Tori can respond to. Grow this community, invite people continually. We're on several different platforms right now. You may be watching us on Americans for Prosperity Tennessee Facebook page. We're over there on YouTube. We're on Twitch. We're all over the place right now. But the point and the purpose is, in this weird new digital world we're living in right now, we're trying to branch out and touch everyone where they are and interact with people as much as we possibly can. And like I said before, I hope we can actually genuinely start some relationships and some dialogue. And I really do hope that the commentary on Facebook Live as you're watching, if you're watching on YouTube, wherever you watch, I hope that commentary, the comments themselves, is what starts to drive this program. So let me kick it to our state director real quick. Tori Venable, introduce yourself one more time. Tell them what you're about and, a little bit something nice.
Tori Venable, State Director of Americans for Prosperity. I helped launch the state chapter back in 2013. I love freedom and liberty, and I feel like we're up there to protect y'all's constitutional rights at the State House.
That's what I'm talking about. My name is Grant Henry, by the way. I'm the Grassroots Engagement Director in the Middle Tennessee area. I have a weird light situation going on over here. It's going to take me a couple weeks to figure the thing out here. And David Thompson, buddy, I hate to put you on the spot here and make you turn your camera on. You don't have to if you don't want to. I just want to make sure we're introducing everybody in the call as we can. David, buddy, introduce yourself to the audience, Knoxville area. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, I'm David Thompson, and I'm the Knoxville, Tennessee Grassroots Engagement Director for, I guess, most of the East Tennessee area, even though we do have a Tri-Cities guy up there. But we all work together on all the projects anyway, so it's all our state. But anyway, thank you for joining us on this live video. And Grant, this is awesome, man. Take it away.
Let's dive into it, by the way. Anywhere you're watching, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, doesn't matter. In the description section of this video, you'll see a little blue lettering. If you click on that blue lettering, it takes you to an Evernote link. And that Evernote link is actually the notes that I'm following for this program right now. In that Evernote link, you can find links to all of the petitions we're talking about, links to the stories we're talking about, to the House bills themselves that we will be discussing in a second. But Tori, let's start a little bit with people saw earlier this afternoon on this very Facebook page. 3 governors back-to-back, West and Wamp, going through. Give a little insight as to what that was like today in the Millennial Debt Foundation, that discussion that happened. Really interesting stuff.
It was really interesting. It was great to have all 3 governors there together at the Beacon Center's offices. And, even former Democrat Governor Phil Bredesen is much more fiscally conservative than a lot of the politicians in D.C. And so they were all pointing out what a danger the national debt has become, and what we can do, how we can all work together to try and start addressing the issues. There's a lot of information. I'm not going to rehash all of it, but feel free to look back at the other videos to take a look. But it was a great event, and we were glad to be a part of it.
Yeah, actually, one of the most interesting things for me, you can check out that video again. It's saved in forever time now on the Facebook page here as well. The most interesting thing, I think, is the focus on state issues themselves, state spending, right? And while we're spending into oblivion seemingly at the federal level, it went over a catalog of ways that every individual governor, the last 3 in a row, have done their part to try and shore up Tennessee spending. And even Governor Lee at the end of it today, reinforced the idea that as far as the state is concerned, we are one of the best in the entire nation. A $2 billion surplus we're sitting on if you include the entirety of all those surplus style numbers. But something that may threaten not just the spending, but the way that we do business here in Tennessee and several other states you may have heard about in the federal news, something called the PRO Act, right? Now, if you don't know, as previously reported in several years back, the PRO Act Again, Tori, this is one of those titles where it's very misleading to what it actually does. But it's been a hot topic of concern for the Biden administration and one of its top legislative priorities for, they say, organized labor. The PRO Act was actually originally passed by the House in February of 2020. So this same time last year, similar time last year. But then the Republican-controlled Senate failed to take any action on it. And under President Biden's administration, the PRO Act is again front and center one more time. This week, March 9th, I don't know, was that Tuesday, Monday, I think this week? Don't quote me on that. Somebody look it up. Monday or Tuesday this week, the House passed the PRO Act 225 to 206, largely along party lines. Now, they do say in the report that I'm reading off of right now, which is from nationallawreview.com, that it faces an uphill battle in a 50-50 split Senate, obviously because the filibuster rules require 60 votes. Before we get to that portion, though, Tori, first reactions to the PRO Act passing the House right along party lines. Where do you feel on this?
Well, I mean, it's not really a surprise. They're gonna keep going after these same policy wish list items now that the Democrats have control of the House. So, of course, they're going to continue pushing these efforts. What's really the biggest concern, though, are for those independent contractors and those small business owners. This would really require almost a forced unionization. So whereas Tennessee is a right to work state, you get to choose whether or not you want to be part of a union. And even if there's a union operational at your workplace, if you choose not to be a part of it, you do not have to pay the dues. You can opt out of the dues. And so this would basically force anyone into joining a union, even if they do not want to, or they do not want them representing their interests. So it takes away a fair amount of freedom and liberty from just the regular everyday person. If you want to join a union, that's great if that's what you want to do. But, you know, should you have to pay $500 or $600 a year for something that maybe you don't see the value in? You know, it's taking away freedom from workers, and we don't think that that's a good thing at all.
Yeah, and I think that's the point, right? It's all about freedom of choice here, as far as I'm concerned. You know, the PRO Act is going to impose severe harm on the American economy and the independence of the American worker. We'll talk about that more in just a second, but the bill would make countless changes to impose significant economic damage and undermine the rights of workers. Now, this includes overturning or banning right-to-work laws throughout the country, which prevents workers from being fired if they choose not to join a union or pay union fees. It's sort of forcing people into unionization. And exactly what Tori just said, no problem with association. Just, I think you should have the freedom to be able to associate as you see fit. More than that, though, Tori, it's also going to restrict independent contracting work, which has provided generations of Americans a path to financial independence and empowered them to make a living on their own terms. And Tori, if I could ask you just point blank here, I have a lot of friends who, I hate this left-right split. I don't even want to call it that way, but I have a lot of friends who agree ideologically with what they think the PRO Act does, but they're also independent contractors. They get the primary amount of their work through that means. And I think once you bring that up as an aspect of this conversation, they start to understand a little bit more the severity of this. Do you have that situation at all? How impactful is that independent contractor aspect going to be?
I mean, that is probably the most impacted folks. So the people that are Uber drivers, the people that your hairstylists, you know, you can think of any number of people. If you don't get a regular paycheck from your employer, if you are say you don't get a paycheck as in they're paying your bills, but you're interacting directly with your customers. Those are the folks, if you get a 1099, say it's tax time, right? If you get a 1099, though, you are the people who are going to be the most affected by this. And, you know, it's going to be devastating, especially if you have businesses that decide they're not going to do business. Uber threatened to leave California over this. Do you imagine we go back to a world where we don't even have Uber again? But that is exactly what we would be looking at.
It's not just that either. The messing around with the right to work is a major issue for me. And again, if you're joining on Facebook, if you're watching on YouTube, throw your comments out there. I'd love to know what you think about that. I'd love to have your comments drive this program every single week, your concerns, your thoughts, your issues. If you disagree with us, bring that to the table.